On this episode of Kibbe on Liberty, we're going to do something that's never been done before. We're going to talk to an anarcho-capitalist Christian rap heavy metal libertarian. His name's Eric July, and we're going to talk about everything about music. We're going to talk about anarcho-capitalism, and we're going to talk about how it is that we can reach the next generation with the ideas of liberty. Check it out. Gonna happen.
Yeah.
I read up. I've been listening to all your stuff, but you know, we'll just see what's gonna happen here. So, tell people who you are and why you're here.
Yeah. Well, I'm here because obviously we want to have a great conversation. We want to talk about some cool stuff. Talk about liberty. See how we can free these people from these shackles. But I do a little bit of everything. Thankfully, I was exposed to a lot of different things as a youngster. So a lot of people know me from the music side of things, being in a hardcore band, being in BackWordz, yelling at the top of my lungs. Some people knew me before then, doing just strictly rap stuff. And then you have those that know me for obviously being libertarian, which was something that I started as a co-founder maybe a couple of years. Well, no, we're pushing on 3 or 4 years by this point. And it grew just like that, sort of that cultural approach, sort of like we have with the music. We had that with the approach with the platform. So now that it's grown, it's expanded so much. So you got people that know me from these different avenues. It really just depends. I get people that, hey, man, I see your videos. Are you talking over at Being Libertarian? Hey, I saw, I heard your song. Or, hey, I see that you're in the comics and stuff like that. So people know me from a lot of different things, and I might come up with something new next year that I want to pursue and try to add to it.
I told the guys, my producers, that I had discovered this Christian anarchist, hip-hop, hardcore, anarcho-capitalist guy, and I wanted to have him on the show, and they were like, that guy exists? There is such a thing?
Yeah, it's probably not a lot.
This is like the beauty of liberty. Like there can be anything's possible. But you're the front man for BackWordz.
Mm-hmm. And
what's your title at Being Libertarian?
Well, I'm the head of multimedia, so meaning everything related to video, podcasting as well. I handle all of that. Not only just producing my own platform or my own like videos and stuff like that, but also we have a team of people that I sort of facilitate in that regards as well. So, and that's continuing to grow. That's sort of we put that on the back burner for a long time. It was more about the memes at first. It was the cool little funny little post that turned into the articles, more formal articles. And now, we more so in this last couple of years, certainly picked up on the video, always trying to figure out new things that we could do, because I think a lot of people are visual learners, certainly these days, because they spend their time with their nose in a phone or on a monitor. So giving them something visual to look at as well. So whatever we can do, I'm always trying to be creative, find new ways to reach people. And also at this point, we're always scouting talent as well, because I think there's a lot of individuals that don't realize that are part of this, more liberty community that are they have their own little niche, and I would love to at least shine a spotlight on them, because I think in this day and age, people sort of think of us libertarians as like these unicorns that don't really, mingle with society or anything like that. We're not regular people, we're weirdos, and some of us are.
And we earn some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. But a lot of us are regular individuals that have interests just like every other individual. So I would love to show that. And I think if I have anything critical of what I see from other people from the movement, if you want to call it that, is that we don't put a big enough spotlight on those sorts of individuals that exist.
Yeah, and I think even to take it a step further, sometimes I will give talks at Ivy League schools. And in particular, I remember this one experience where I was sort of the token libertarian on a very progressive platform with a bunch of other sort of intellectual types, and I casually used the word libertarian, which I assumed was safe in the sense that people at least know what it is now. And the professor that was running the event stopped me and he said, hold on, Matt, let me just ask people, does anyone here know what a libertarian is? And these are all young people from Ivy League schools, and there wasn't a single hand that went up. So, and I think that could be really frustrating, but it might also be good news. Like, we have a blank canvas. We can tell this story, we can paint this picture in a way, and what I like most about your story is you're going upstream of politics. This isn't about politics at all. It's about culture, and it's about values, and it's about connecting with people and making liberty like a cool thing that all the cool kids want to be when they grow up.
Yeah, I mean that's why I got into like music. I mean, or more so why I wanted to use my art as a vehicle,
yeah,
to spread this message that I truly believe in. Other philosophies, that's what they do, and I figured, like, man, what would it take for me to just take the talents, the God-given talents that and the crafts that I worked on as well, you know, in singing and rapping and screaming and doing whatever, and trying to mix all of that stuff up and present it in a way that I know certain sectors would be able to digest it. Yeah. I've been a part of, you know, metalcore, hardcore communities for a decade now. You know, I'm a young guy. I'm only 28 years old, but certainly for a decade I was in it in a sense of being a performer. And I would say about 5 years or so, it clicked like, hey, man, I have something that I truly believe in. Why don't my lyrics more so reflect that? And in doing so, I don't have to hit any sort of off switch. Like, I can just come in a medium like this, and we can chat about these beautiful ideas, but I can also drop those hints in music, and it doesn't feel like I'm beating you over the head with it because the music came first. That was the primary thing. I wanted to make music that people could listen to, people would enjoy, people could relate to, and it just happened to have that philosophical backing. So that came second. It was make good music first, find a good set of musicians first that we could, you know, we were cohesive, we made good music, and then we presented it and people responded to it. And every other day it seems like I get people that are messaging myself or the other singer, and they're saying, hey, man, I was introduced to this. I saw, you know, I looked up you guys as individuals. I saw you had been talking about some of the material that you put in your music, you know, and that's something that's intriguing. I wouldn't have never heard it had it not been for them just seeing us. And that is my rule. Like, if I can get in front of a venue, 500 cap room or something like that, and even one of those people that didn't know who we were walked away from that and was like, man, I could relate to it. He said something that I wanted to at least look into. Maybe he doesn't get it that day. Maybe it doesn't click until a few months from now, a year from now, and he has that experience and he can relate to something that I said. To me, that's a victory. That's one person that didn't understand, that wouldn't have been exposed to that. Because certainly, I know you can speak in your experience as well. I mean, a lot of this cultural, the stuff that we're involved in is so dominated by progressives. That's the one narrative that you know is going to be there, is going to be prominent. They're going to listen to it. They're going to hear it, be exposed to it. It's like I just wanted to give them sort of an alternative to what it is that because like, you know, certainly in your experience, they didn't know what it was. They maybe heard people mention what a libertarian was or mention libertarianism quite often. If they do know it, it's like a straw man version of what libertarianism is.
At most there's a caricature. But you said something that I think is important advice to the next generation of libertarians that want to connect in popular culture. You said that first came putting together a talented group of musicians and making good music. And I feel like a lot of quote-unquote libertarian art is just self-aware, like we're going to turn a white paper into a movie.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Because that's not how culture works. And I think our progressive friends do a much better job.
Credit them all the time.
Of telling a beautiful story or making a song, and creating an environment where people want it. They're like, I'm in. I want to be part of this. And the ideas don't come until afterwards. AOC is great at this. Like she creates an environment in her first video. I'm agreeing. I'm 2/3 through the video, and I'm like, yeah. I'm sick and tired of crony capitalism. I'm tired of entrenched politicians in Washington D.C. that don't give a crap about their communities back home. And then all of a sudden, we're talking about Medicare for all, but you could see where she would hook somebody that had nenever thought about, well, what is the rational Austrian argument for the provision of health care?
Right.
But, let's take a step back, because I want people to understand a little bit more about your band, BackWordz, and you guys had a big year in the big 2 years. The last 2 years have been very successful. Tell people like what's happened if they don't know.
Yeah, I mean, because when I tell people, I think because a lot of people are used to just libertarians, like you mentioned, having that corny sort of art, where it's more so they're massaging their own ego than anything. And I think that when I tell people that maybe aren't familiar with the band, that I'm in a band, I think that's where they go. Some always just in some little, garage band or something like that, and they look us up and they see the millions of views and they're like, wait a minute, these guys are for real. But we all came from semi-successful bands before we had formed the BackWordz. All of us, myself, the instrumentalists, all came from bands that were doing something in the scene that was notable.
You guys can play.
Yeah, exactly. We're good at.
You're not messing around.
Right. Now, these are guys that have been playing their instruments for forever. I've been singing and songwriting since I was a kid. So that came first. It was never, and it wasn't ever forced. It was an accident. I left my other band. I don't tell a lot of people this, but I left my other band. And I didn't even know if music was. I was doing a lot of ghostwriting, but I didn't know if I was going to, or when at whatever point that was going to be, that I was going to have my own project again, and what that project was going to be. And our producer now linked me up with some guys. Said, "Hey, man, they want to gear a band towards your talents," because I had a falling out with my last band when I started mixing some of those elements in, rap elements as well as liberty-based elements. The song I went out on was called "The Capitalist." That was the name of the song for my last band that I did, and we had a falling out about direction, econ, stuff like that, and he was like, "Hey, these guys want to gear something towards your vocals, towards your approach." And I was like, okay, I'll at least listen. And I remember them sending me a demo. I was like, this is incredible. Like and I was thinking of stuff right on the dot. And it worked out perfectly. And then later on, we reached out to the second vocalist, and Alex, who was, fellow hardcore libertarian, and it was a hand in glove fit. So it was a natural sort of thing. It was an accident, but I think it working out like that was what made this pop off. And we were because we were like, all right, we want to make sure that whatever is going to be our direction is going to be our direction. We're going to go about it. Some people are going to like it. Some people are going to dislike it. It's going to be what it's going to be. And we had a successful first song release. And then one thing led to another. We always made sure we presented ourselves as professional artists. And I think that's what a lot of individuals lack, not just libertarians, not just rock musicians. People have, all right, I got this good song idea or something like that. But you got to pay to get it mixed. You got to pay to get it mastered, recorded in the first place. You got to have some sort of visual with it, music videos. We did all of that, paid out of pocket for all of that to let people know that we are for real. And one thing led to another. And our first album, Veracity, landed on so many, but I can't count the amount of Billboard charts that it landed on, all the sound scans, being #1 alternative new artist, #2 heat seeker, being top 10 and 11 in rock and rap hardcore. We didn't even know we were going to get on the rap charts, but they put us on there as well. And so we did very, very well. And I think that showed a lot of liberty-based artists that there's a market for it. It's just a way that you have to go about it, and we wanted to make sure that the music came before everything. I didn't want people to feel like I was beating them over the head with philosophy, right? It was about the music first. We had a target, and that was a community that we had been a part of, bands that we had loved, that type of music. and we put our own spin on it. But it was about the music, it was about the art first. So when people were listening to it, they didn't even know what the lyrics even meant. Because they was jamming to like the vocal patterns, to the guitars, to the drums, and then once they read the lyrics, it was like, oh, he's talking about this. Yeah. So it was about the art first, it's about the culture first, and it was about, you know, targeting that before we even was gonna put the cherry on top and having those philosophical liberty sort of. You know, I even got a praxeology song. So, you know.
I never thought in a million years that I'd be listening to a song called Praxeology.
Exactly.
And is that the song where you name drop Mises and
Hayek and all those guys. Yeah, like, and it was a straightforward song. But it was to a groove that those people could respond to. And that's important. I don't think people understand that. And this is why I'm always talking about culture and cultural infiltration. It's like, man, everybody I feel like has some sort of subculture that they're a part of, that they can relate to other individuals, that has absolutely nothing to do with politics.
Right.
That's your ticket.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's your ticket in trying to influence them positively. Certainly from a libertarian standpoint, you already have something that you relate to. You shouldn't have to beat them over the head. You know, with the philosophy, you already belong to that particular subculture.
So I bet you that it's harder than ever to penetrate the Billboard list, because, you know, it's the good news is you don't have to go convince Elektra Records that your stuff can sell 1 million units, and so everything's been democratized and decentralized, and the record industrial complex is gone. And that's a place where creative disruption can happen, but it also means there's lots of competition, I assume. And so, like, how do you break through? And oddly enough, I'm thinking about Ron Paul right now, because the Ron Paul revolution could not have happened without the internet.
Not at all.
There's no way it could have happened. And he's using presidential politics as sort of a pop culture entry point where, you know, most people don't care about politics, most people don't pay attention, but once in a while, every 4 years, we have this conversation, and Ron Paul leveraged that. But, you know, the money bombs, the message, none of that could have happened without technology. That has to be true for BackWordz too, right? How do you sell your stuff?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I would say, a large portion of our success is due to that. You used to have to go through those mediums, right? You have to go through all of those mediums.
The record man.
To even get people to listen to it. Even to get your stuff on a lot of the platforms that exist, but with streaming services, and now there's a straight line to just getting my stuff on the Spotifys of the world, on the iTunes of the world. Like, I can just get it out there, YouTube. I can get it out there for people to listen to and for people to see. And that is a relatively new phenomena. It's certainly in music. That is relatively new. This is why the industry, the labels can't even catch up anymore. And I think they're going to become more obsolete than ever. Certainly they are. I feel like they already are, but I think it's more of a momentous thing. They're going to become more and more obsolete as more individuals realize, wait a minute, I can get my stuff out there to people, and I can own my own, you know, masters and my own publishing and all of that. Are you serious? So that allowed us, and it worked to our advantage. But like you said, there is a catch with that, because it's like oversaturated with musicians now. Everybody that you can, definitely, because a lot of stuff is digitized, you don't even have to be the best player of your instrument to record something that people may respond to and people may like. But the key with us was always having that sort of visual representation. So we had those music videos, and they were creative music videos. They told a narrative. So it caught people's attention, and people would see it and like, oh man, there's this guys, and they have some cool lyrics, and they have some cool message behind it, and that's being shown to me visually, and it keeps their attention. So, and because our style stuck out like a sore thumb, and just myself being, I come from not just a hip hop and R&B, background, but 90s New Jack and Motown soul stuff that I grew up. My mother influenced me on. And these other guys came from different sort of rock and blues background. I came from that as well. And we just implemented that style sort of in our record, which is why we were able to produce a sound that nobody else really could do. They didn't. You get guys that maybe try to mix, for example, rap with rock stuff, but the rapper isn't really that good. You know what I mean? Or, but I was able to do multiple different things because I did come from a rap background, but I also worked on my skill set in becoming a better screamer and becoming a decent singer. And we were able to mix all those elements. It was free reign, and we don't have a A&R or a label in the back of our head or in our ear saying, "Hey, man, you need to gear your sound towards this." And I think more people responded to it because I think it could have ended up a different way had we signed.
Yeah.
We purposely said we would never do that, and we didn't. And I think that having that free reign and being able to do whatever we wanted to do, I think that worked to our benefit. But it's about the art first, and yeah, it might be oversaturated, but the way that you can stick out is give people something they could see as well as what they could hear. But what you hear has to be something solid. Like, we go to the best. Our producer, I feel like he's the best in the business in terms of making us sound great. You know what I mean? Making us sound great, and then we do it live, and it sounds good as well. But we worked on our sound and came up with something from a creative standpoint first and foremost, and we just happened to stick out because we covered all of our bases. Every single single that we released initially had a music video to it. I don't know how I got over like maybe 10 music videos to our name. You got bands that have existed for way longer than us that don't have that number of music videos, but we did that because we think a lot of people are visual learners. They want to see that. They're on their phones, they're on their computer, and they want to see it as well as hear it. And it worked to our advantage.
I think that that decentralized process where there isn't like a record company executive deciding what the public wants, it sort of frees up the process, and it's probably going to kind of turbocharge the mutation and evolution and creation of new music. Absolutely. But I think music itself is sort of a great explainer. If you love music and you love the way that it changes and borrows from traditions and then turns it into something new, which is exactly what you guys have done, it sort of explains, like you're struggling to explain how markets figure stuff out. And, Hayek talks about spontaneous order, but nobody knows what that means. But just look at the history of American music and how it evolved and was stolen. I think about, I'm a huge John Coltrane fan.
Mm-hmm.
And I particularly love his more radical, hardcore stuff towards the end of his life. But there's this awesome old story where Miles Davis, John Coltrane is ascending, and Miles Davis is still sort of stuck in the hard bop tradition. He's sort of a purist. I'm going to play this kind of music. And Coltrane's doing 10, 15, 20-minute atonal solos. Yeah. And you can actually listen. They just released some new live albums where the crowd is booing. And he doesn't care because he's pushing them to think about something differently. And Miles Davis is on side of the stage bitching and complaining about it. What is he doing? This isn't music, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's that sort of creative disruption that is exactly like what Mises talks about when he talks about entrepreneurship.
Yep. No,
it's not about maximizing profits. It's about looking around the corner of history and coming up with something that people don't even know they want yet.
Yeah, and it's so unpredictable, right? I mean, that's part of it, and that's, I think, when we talk about markets from a libertarian standpoint, music is certainly a great example of that because it evolves, it changes, and people are attracted to things that they just could not have predicted even 5 years ago, that you can't say pinpoint, this is going to be the sound that people are going to run with. I think maybe you could have controlled it a lot more when you had to go through the record, man, but now certainly more than ever, it's like people don't even know. People are pulling things out of the bag and becoming more creative. They're mixing genres more than ever, and you're hearing new sounds. And again, people couldn't predict that, and that's just the market in action when people are free because of the decentralization. Now, I think it's a perfect example because the more freer people are, the more creative, they're coming up with to try to be successful, obviously, in this market and capture whatever part of the market they can they can capture, but they're coming up with new things in the process, and then other people build upon those new things. They come up with their own thing, make it better, and a lot of instances. I think we saw that with rap, like certainly over the years. I mean, and how you could listen back to the, you know, hip hop, the hibbit like back then, and then you go like into the 90s and how lyrical the wordplay, how it just sort of warped. And when the Cool G Raps and the Nas's of the world came, and they were just the way they were stringing together these words, and then you got a guy like Eminem who is a product of all of that, who is from a metaphorical standpoint is doing things that is unheard of, and able to rhyme so many times in a short period of time. Like that was, you listen to the first sort of Sugar Hill game.
It's like a physical wonder that he gets spit so many words out.
Exactly.
I can barely form a sentence myself, so I sort of resent him.
Yeah, but it's an example of how just an idea, you know what I mean, the boom bap came to where it is now, when you're having a lot of people where it's more of an expectation that you to be more lyrical and stuff like that. So I love music in that aspect, because certainly as it becomes more and more decentralized, nobody really knows how people are going to respond. And there's always new artists that are popping up that are self-made for the most part, certainly more than ever now. Self-made artists that are coming up, and people are digging their music, and now more than ever because they're able to get it to people. Like it's a straight line to YouTube, straight line to iTunes. They can get it there, get it uploaded. People can listen to it, word of mouth, or they can spread it, email it, you know, upload it, whatever they do, and it just spreads like wildfire, and it does it so fast. But it's because people are able, they're just more free than what they ever were back in the gap when you had to go through the record man.
Let's take a step back and talk a little bit about where you come from, your childhood, and I'm curious how on earth you ever found libertarian ideas.
Yeah, so I grew up Dallas, Texas. Father was around for a little bit, but for the vast majority of my life, I was raised by a single mother. Family full of leftists, putting it bluntly, and that's just more so. It's like leftists have this political monopoly, certainly in predominantly black communities, and just black culture in general. And going into college, I remember learning more so about economics. And I was still stuck in a box. I wanted to know about the black economists. I didn't want to hear what white economists had to say. They could have said the same thing. But thank God I came across the likes of the Thomas Sowell, great Thomas Sowell, Dr. Thomas Sowell, and Walter E. Williams. And certainly both of them changed my life, certainly the latter, because the latter in Walter Williams, he speaks on some of the gripes. That there are some legitimate gripes that these communities have. Some aren't so legitimate, but the more so legitimate gripes, and pointing that, I guess, anger, right, and seeing what the state for what it was, as opposed to pointing to like the phantom white man or something like that, but pointing to what the state is and how it created this atmosphere. And seeing it like that, and seeing it broke down like that, whether it be his state against blacks or anything like that, and just thinking critically about that, like, man, well, it's my gripe really with these people. I think it's more so with the state and the atmosphere and the environment that it's sort of more so artificially created. And you look at the history of black folks, certainly in America, be it slave codes, you know, all the way to, you know, Jim Crow laws, the Plessy versus Ferguson's of the world, all the Supreme Court cases, Dred Scott v. Sanford, that set this precedent, right? And it was the arm of and this is why, you know, Walter Williams always says, like, you know, that's the arm of these quote unquote racists, is the state. But unfortunately, I think a lot of people within these communities have convinced us that, well, hey, you got to use the government, or the government is your friend. Just vote for me. I will expand the government and I will help out everybody. So, and just seeing reading that, and that just sent me down this rabbit hole, right? Of, okay, Walter Williams turned into, okay, Chicago economics, that turned into more the Austrian side of things. So learning about Rothbard, just reading the Anatomy of the State by Rothbard, just, it was like, whoa, wait a minute. This is how it made sense. It made so much sense. But I wouldn't have started thinking like that had it not been for just reading like even basic economics, as well as like seeing the talks. These were stuff these guys were saying long before I was even thought about being born. Certainly Sowell and a lot of the, you know, minimum wage and how that's affected these communities, and more so certainly Austrianism got me thinking as an individual. You know what I mean? And thinking about that, I'm like, man, it just started to make sense. So it was a rabbit hole. One thing came another, you know?
So like Thomas Sowell has written the best Hayek book I think there is, because Hayek can be pretty hard to read. The translation from German is pretty difficult, but Sowell is such an amazing writer. He has a book called Knowledge and Decisions. I have to give a shout out to my favorite Thomas Sowell book.
Yeah.
And there's so many you could choose from. But your story, it triggers a memory from a couple years ago. So our team was traveling to South Africa, and we're doing a series called The Deadly Isms, Socialism, Fascism, Authoritarianism. And we did one on racism, and we did it in South Africa, and a study of apartheid. And when I was researching that, I discovered a book review of The State Against Blacks by Walter Williams that I wrote when I was in graduate school at George Mason, studying under Walter Williams. Yeah. And I had totally forgotten that I had written this, but you know, to your point, the entire apartheid system is a government elected by a majority imposing racist policies to hold people down. And every example you just cited, and this is like, this is part of the narrative that we lose, because it would always be evil for a majority, be they black or white, to use the apparatus of the state.
Absolutely.
to exploit people, to abuse people. And you know, it's in that book where Walter Williams points out that the minimum wage was used by the white majority to prevent black people from getting jobs in apartheid South Africa. And yet today, it's almost a religion. $15 minimum wage is viewed as the only socially just thing to do. In effect, it keeps people from getting jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I see a lot of black folks championing that. And even, you don't even have to, but yeah, you can go Australia, you can go South Africa. I mean, even here, when you want to talk about minimum wage in this country, it was used to price, you know, union workers trying to price women, children, as well as black people out of the market. You know what I mean? And that's,
people of color get screwed for.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why, you know, even now, you look at black teenage unemployment and how it's always among the highest in the country, among any sort of demographic. And this is because a lot of these, and how Walter Williams was, that these people, black kids, go to these rotten schools, right? Useless, not really learning anything, not becoming effective, learning how to be effective and useful in the marketplace. So the only way to become useful is to work, right? Or prove their worth is to work. And the minimum wage, unfortunately, says, it's basically saying, hey, I'm making it illegal to hire you. Even if you might mop floors to get your foot in the door, I'll pay you $6 an hour to do it. Well, federal minimum wage says you got to pay me $7.20. I can't afford. I can just pay somebody at the register to work the register and to do that as well, even though I'd be 100% up for hiring you for less. So it's pricing these people out of the market. It's one of the most rotten laws. Minimum wage is one of the more rotten laws to exist. And unfortunately, these progressive have convinced, and it's not just with black folks, it's with a lot of individuals, that these sort of laws, these regulations are to liberate people. And it's not how it works. It's economically it's not sound by any means, but unfortunately you do have a lot of individuals that are able to convince them. And I was one of those youngsters sort of dim-witted youngsters that thought this made a lot of sense, and more so all that it was to just create, using the state like it's the sort of the great equalizer, completely ignoring the amounts of debt that is piled up, that certainly the federal government has piled up over the years, ignoring the spending habits, ignoring the fact that none of what it does works, but just treating it like it's the great equalizer. Certainly from an envious standpoint, I think more than ever, that's what it's being used as. It's like, well, you see somebody thinks somebody has too much money. Well, for whatever reason, the moral thing to do is give it to the government. Like, for example, that for whatever reason, that just makes it okay. Just give it the government. We can take more, and people are like rah 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 rah. Like, wait a minute, there's something wrong with that. It alone how you're. You strong arm these people for the money, but why is it that institution should have right to it? You know what I mean? And that's certainly from what I try to talk about, a lot about, and my approach, be it whatever demographic, because of my music, because of my background, I'm able to talk to so many different demographics on any given day, and I guess gear the message towards them in whatever way that I think they'd be most responsive to. But that's certainly my approach, is just getting them to think about what is the state, what does it do, and where are our gripes really? When we say that we have a problem with this, what is it? Is there a regulation? Is there a law that's maybe preventing people from entering the market? We can go all day long about the regulations and how those, and the amounts of different laws and licenses that you have to get to even enter. Like, if you want to enter the market, you can have the best idea. You can even have enough money to start it, but there's so many different rules you have to follow to just act without the government coming down on you. And it's keeping people that are up there, and people down there are down there. And we don't talk about that enough.
You have a song that essentially, it almost sounds like Jordan Peterson. You're talking about the virtue of work and how you're going to work harder than everybody else. And I always thought that was sort of a universal value, that being free to work is the best way to control your own destiny. But there is a strain of modern progressivism, particularly, not necessarily in Black Lives Matter, but in the black community, that associates the word work with the word slavery. And I don't know where that comes from exactly. But I think that one of the projects here is to convince young people that work is the only way to get out from under the thumb of somebody else.
People, for whatever reason, it's like a word that people like demonize, right? And this is, like the song you're referencing, like, be great. I was writing that from my own personal approach, and I look at it could have ended a different way. I grew up banging, being a knucklehead. I could be another black statistic, dead or in jail, which is probably what I should have. It was a lot of close calls, and probably what should have happened. Thank the Lord that it didn't. But I look at where I came from and where I'm at now, and just because I'm outworking a lot of people, we talked about the music and stuff like that. I just outworked effort alone. And it's not saying that it's universal, like that'll always happen like that. But I firmly believe that if you work hard, if you're that is ethic, right? That somebody's going to find valuable somewhere, and you're going to be able to turn that into something that can essentially make you money. You know what I mean? Just outworking people. Like, people just don't understand. Even to this day, I'm still young, so I work to the wheels fall, how long my days are, how early I wake up, and the different things that I'm involved in. I create all my own my videos and stuff like that. That's all me. I create that content. I learned how to do all of that stuff, how to edit videos, how to shoot videos, how to, and all this work to get this equipment to take my videos to the next level. And
you just did it yourself.
Yeah, like I did it all by myself, and definitely in this day and age with YouTube and stuff, like, you can learn how to do just about anything you want for fairly cheap in this day and age. So to me, hard work and work in general should not be anything to be demonized, obviously, because that to me is me controlling my own destiny. This is why the lyric is, if I fail, that's on me. Like, I look at that, and if I do something and it doesn't work out, it doesn't pan out the way that I thought it was, I look at that as more liberation than anything, because it's like, well, I was on my terms.
Yeah,
It was something that I did that made that happen, as opposed to some external boogeyman that's trying to prevent me, from succeeding. So that's my approach, is that work is something that, and I guess I learned a lot of that, to be fair, from my mother, who worked multiple jobs to not only just keep food on the table, but to allow me to do the things that I wanted to do, like be involved in sports. And that was my ticket out. You know what I mean? I was a great track and field runner, track and field, University of Memphis, as well as Texas A&M, Corpus Christi. So that was my ticket out. But she did everything that she could. She worked, wake up early, 6 o'clock, working, go to the second job, wouldn't get back home until like 10 o'clock the night. And that was on, any given day. So I would see that, and I saw her leading by example. And to me, that's just liberating. To me, that in itself, work, grinding, is something that I value, something that I appreciate. And that's a trait that I look at even with other people. We look at, whether it be the people that are in my band, people that I do business with. I pick up on that. I think anybody can value that. Like, hey, man, this person is going to give it whatever they can. It might not work out, but whatever they can, they're going to grind. They're not going to complain or anything like that, man. Like, those are people that are valuable, and work shouldn't be demonized. It's a liberating thing.
Yeah. So let's talk about libertarianism, and let's talk about anarcho-capitalism.
Yeah.
The whole platform. But my theory of libertarian values is that it's basically what mom taught you, and she stole it from her mom, and when we talk about it, we're stealing from mom, and it was really, really controversial stuff, like don't kill anybody, don't take their stuff, work hard, mind your own business. It's pretty much all the rules you need to live a good life, and I just described, I think, the entire corpus of libertarian thought in a nutshell. There might be a couple other things in there, but
that in itself. It's like libertarianism is not this philosophy. I think even libertarians sometimes try to make it a lot more complicated than what it is. It's fairly simple. The way that I word it is it's a philosophy based on private property rights, but private property rights starting with self-ownership. That is, you own yourself, and therefore your body. Therefore, the only thing you owe people.
And there's a song.
Yeah, exactly. But you own yourself, therefore your body, and therefore the only thing you owe other people and the thing they owe you is non-aggression. So it's like you said, don't hit people, don't take their stuff, and it's a simple thing. And I think from a core standpoint, a lot of individuals relate to that. I speak at college campuses all the time. I say, you got your car. If I walked outside to your car, bust the window open, someone hot wired it and drove off with it, you be upset. Raise your hand. They're like, yeah. Like, wow, well, you stole from me. Like, okay, you're correct. I did not have the right to do that. That was an act of aggression and me stealing, damaging and instilling your private property. All right, let's expand that to this, and that. And I guess that's more so the difficult thing, if any, is to get people to extend that to the logical conclusion. But when I think libertarianism, I think that, and people, when I say that, a lot of libertarians get it confused and try to make it a lot more complicated because they start limiting it to like these social issues, right? And it just irks me about libertarians when they talk about, well, it's about these rights for these sorts of people and these rights for that sort of people, and you got to agree with people. No, it's not. It's not about any of that. You can believe whatever it is that you want, so as long as you aren't using aggression upon another individual. You and I can think that what you're doing is the dumbest thing ever. And you can think what I'm doing is the dumbest thing ever. It doesn't matter. It be your lifestyle. This is why I said, in one of our tracks, nobody's obligated to accept it. Or in that sense, they just owe you non-aggression. So you should be able to practice it on your own property, on the property of somebody that consented for you to be on their property and do that. That is your business, and nobody should be able to impede on that and prevent you from doing that. You just can't force that on everybody else.
Now, you just said something that I think is important for conservatives and maybe social liberal libertarians, because I've noticed that there is this fight
absolutely
within the Libertarian Party. It's kind of a proxy for the broader culture war between people that live socially conservatively and people that live socially liberally. And I feel like they're missing the point of what libertarianism is all about. It's I don't want the government to have the power for you to impose your social values on me. And I think that's a way to not like have to choose sides in the culture war, because we're sort of Switzerland, right? I don't want to tell you how to live your life.
Yeah.
You may suffer consequences for bad decisions, and as your neighbor, I might be willing to sort of step in and help you work through that.
Yeah.
If you're willing for that. But let's not outsource this to a third-party politician's government, because they don't have your interest in mind. They don't care about you.
For them to.
And I'm watching this fight go on, and I'm like, I don't even understand what we're arguing about, because I think there's room for all sorts of people and all sorts of choices inside of a libertarian world. That's what tolerance and respect is all about.
Yeah, no, that's what, and again, that's what irks me about. I have these conversations, and I see these people arguing, jumping down each other's throat about it, because they think that for whatever reason they're limiting libertarianism about to their personal like bias. This is why I've always hated the term. When somebody defines libertarianism as socially liberal and or economically conservative, I was like, I hate that, because I'm like, that's incorrect. No, right. You can be socially liberal, socially conservative, socially in the middle. Well, it doesn't matter where you at, and economically, fiscally, you can be whatever it is that you want. It's just you got to limit that to your own self and your own private property, and you can't force that upon another individual. So this is why I'm always trying to bring that conversation back to these libertarians. Like, libertarianism has nothing to do with your personal social like bias. Like, it has everything to do with private property rights and limiting. So why something would be wrong, or why something, let's say, would be permissible under libertarianism is dependent on if that violates the property rights of another individual, be it in self or material. So, or any, that's all property is.
Or as your mom might say, live and let live.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm stealing it from your mom again. I wrote a book called Don't Hurt People and Don't Take Their Stuff. And it was designed, it was not easy to do, because I was trying to translate my sort of Austrian economics and classical liberalism and everything else, my Ayn Rand influence, which she was very important to me when I was a kid, into something that was basically just fundamentally American values. And when I go hang out with my big L libertarian friends, or even my small L ones, we're talking about the non-aggression principle, but we're not even talking about that. We're talking about the NAP.
Yeah.
And so we're using acronyms that people couldn't possibly understand. And even if they did, it's like, why don't you just quote your mom and say, don't hurt people and don't take their stuff.
Just break it down for the common man to understand. And this is why I think certainly the guys like Sowell, from an economic standpoint, and why he was able to impact a lot of people's lives positively, because he didn't use the jargon, he didn't use the graphs or like basic economics. That was his thing. And in him writing, it was like, hey, I want to write something that the common man can understand. And I think that's an effective approach when marketing, if you will, libertarianism, is breaking it down for the common man, to understand. It's not necessarily about, and I think there's a place for people that are so like philosophically sound, and so they have all the ideas in the world. They can break it down. Human Action by Mises is a long read, man, and maybe there's people that are interested in this. And even I think, but certainly guys like myself, who I believe that we're like front line, right? And funneling those people to that information, that source of information. Hey, I want to get it all the time. Hey, man, I want to know more about what it is. You got any books or something that you recommend? That's after I've already reeled them in and got them interested. Oh, yeah, go read The Anatomy of the State by Rothbard. Go read Ethics of Liberty by Rothbard if you want to understand this more. But that was after I reeled them in by just breaking something down for them to understand, or putting it in a way that they can better digest it. And I think that's the more difficult thing, because libertarians have all the ideas in the world, right? And we have the ideas, like we're winning in that aspect, but how do we communicate them?
Let's let's pursue that a little bit, because let's break down. You're an anarcho-capitalist, anarchism, capitalism. We've mashed those two words together. I suspect, other than a couple dozen libertarians, no one has any idea what that means. What does that mean to you?
Well, anarcho-capitalism is what I like to say is obviously it's a form of libertarianism, but where a lot of libertarians make exception to the state, which is usually in the aspect of court systems, usually in the aspect of security, defense. Mm-hmm. The anarcho-capitalist says, well, we accept that markets are better suited to solve problems, solve issues. Why would we make excuses for those institutions? That's all that it is. And this is why people word it like usually it's libertarianism to the logical conclusion. Now, I will say that a lot of libertarians, or more so anarcho-capitalists, have made enemies out of like minarchists. I don't do that. You know, we're on the same side.
Let's even define that term.
Well, when I think minarchism, I think the standard libertarian. I think the guy that believes that this
limited government,
limited
strictly
government.
limited constitutional government.
Right. I don't make those guys. We are on the same side as far as if we can get to a minarchist society, then let's start arguing or jumping down each other's throats. But anarcho-capitalism, and this is what, because I never really crossed that line. I know a lot of, they always say that, hey, the difference between like a minarchist and an anarchist is 6 months. But I never went that route. Like one thing led, I got it almost like that, and it was more so Anatomy of the State, why I keep referencing, and no, Mises isn't paying me to say this. Anything like that. That book really opened my eyes, because we always think what government is. And then they say like we're the government and these kind of sort of catchphrases, but when you break it down, that's not really what it is. The way he defines it more so is this territorial monopoly on like use of force and violence. And I'm like, yeah, I guess, that's what it is. Because if you remove that from the equation, it ceases to be a state. So anarcho-capitalism is extending those ideas that usually your standard libertarian is going to say, markets, free markets, capitalism, yada yada. We don't stop at the court system. We don't stop at the defense. We don't stop at anything like that. We say, yeah, those should be privatized as well. That's all it is.
So I have I'm skeptical about using the word anarchism, and I'm skeptical about using the word capitalism because you know, technically speaking, and there's Logan on my staff gets mad at me because I criticize the use of the word anarchism, because he's like, that just means no state. Mm-hmm. But I think when we say that word, it means the opposite. It means it's chaos and violence.
Yeah, that's what people associate with it.
And kids dressed in black in the streets who are sucker punching people and burning cars and all that stuff.
And trash cans.
But you know, if you take the technical definition, the absence of a state, when you use the word anarchism and you think about our daily lives, almost everything we do successfully is completely unplanned, completely undictated. There is no government telling us what to do. There's no enforcer. There's no central scrutinizer. Right. And there has to be a better way to explain sort of the beautiful chaos of all these millions of people getting along peacefully and solving problems and doing things. I feel like we should focus on the beauty of it a little bit more. And the same with capitalism. I'm a little bit sympathetic to young people when they get these sort of push polls that say, do you like socialism or capitalism? And I suspect in their minds they're thinking about crony capitalism.
Yeah, more I would say more often than not, that's exactly what they're thinking about. They're not thinking about capitalism as we define it, which is why I always go out of my way to define it. When I get that question a lot, like as far as capitalism being good or bad, and I always define it like capitalism as certainly the anarcho-capitalist advocates is the private ownership of goods and services and the free and voluntary exchange of those private goods and services. So what people generally associate with capitalism, the statism, that's diametrically opposed to you know, what capitalists actually are advocates of. And I think a lot of that starts with, I mean, same with anarchism, when you think about the historical, more so context of that, when you think about the, you know, the Proud Huns and, you know, all the anarchists that use these terms, right? Libertarian, even with libertarian, looking at mutualists and them using that term historically, it was always associated with leftism, you know what I mean, of some sort. So I have to always try to go out of my way to define capitalism, right, as I am an advocate of, just so it catches on with people and they understand what it is, because it's not what they generally associate with it, wherever maybe their little professor or whatever, however they define it.
Yeah, they're Marxist professors.
Yeah, it's defining it in a way that no capitalist actually advocates.
Yeah.
You know, they don't define it like that. So I'm always telling them to go back to that, and that's how I generally define the private ownership of goods and services and the free and voluntary exchange of those private goods and services. And if you go from Sowell to a broth bar, that's generally how it is understood and it is defined. It does not require government. It doesn't even imply government or anything like that. There are individuals who think that maybe the state needs to exist in order for, I guess, it to exist, but that's not the case. That's not what capitalism is. It's not what you know, even I don't think it's what anarchism is, but that's a whole different discussion. But capitalism, that's generally how I define it. So I think that it's key, if you're going to be some sort of effective communicator, is that you break that down. And I usually stop it right there. I don't even move past that. I say, when somebody says capitalism, they just say, wait, stop right there. Please define that term for me right now. And then they say, oh, well, it's this, now. I was like, well, you're arguing with a brick wall at this point. If you want to go argue against that, that's fine, but that's not what I'm an advocate of. And it cuts through the conversation. I think this is the gift and the curse of being a libertarian, because generally libertarians think they got the world figured out.
Right.
And they assume that how they view the world and that knowledge base, everybody else views it that way.
They're not listening.
Yeah.
They're not listening, and they're not imagining how other people might interpret words, either popular words like capitalism or pretty obscure words like the non-aggression principle, something like that. I'm sort of obsessed with words, and my top secret mission in life, which I say every day publicly, is I want to steal some of our words back from the progressive left.
Like liberal
because, you know, libertarianism, Hayek says this, it's a made-up word. It doesn't really convey who we are. But other words too, like justice, and one in particular, community. And I think libertarians have been strawmanned with this caricature, and Ayn Rand has been strawmanned with this caricature of what she was talking about, you know, when she talks about individualism and even selfishness. You have to understand her in the context of, she fled the Bolshevik Revolution, and it was kind of a rage against the communist machine. I'm a person, and you don't own me. But I do think we don't tell the story of community very well, and how it is that free people naturally help each other, naturally solve problems, naturally lift up people that are in trouble. You know, the welfare state discourages that. If you can outsource it to a third party, why do it? But we need to talk about the community aspect of libertarianism.
I agree, because I think people think for whatever reason it's more of a it is an individualist philosophy, but they go hyper individualist, as in me.
Right.
And I think the people that straw man the philosophy, the ideas, that's how they try to convey it. But in acknowledging the fact that I own myself is me saying that I'm certainly willing still to be cordial with the individual next to me, have some sort of sense of community, and that's why we're advocates in the first place. And this is where we have to do a better job of communicating. That's why we're advocates of these ideas in free markets, because we recognize that individuals are better suited to solve these issues by mingling with each other, and the best ideas win. You know what I mean? It makes things cheaper for us. It makes our standard of living better, higher, because we don't have this third party sort of arbitrary that gave themselves really the power to dictate how individuals are supposed to live their lives. And they are set with a task. The way I always word this is the state is set with a task that is utterly impossible. They think that they can speak on behalf of every single individual, and they simply cannot do that. It is literally impossible for them to do that because every individual is an individual, and people sometimes gravitate towards people that are like them in ideas. But I think and not to go on too much of a tangent, but I think that people acting in their own self-interest is what ends up actually bettering our own lives. I know she did a great job in communicating this, and Walter Williams, the analogy that he always uses, like people like always rag on him about talking about greed, right? And he's like, well, I don't see greed as an inherently bad thing, because think about it like this: an Idaho potato farmer trying to get potatoes to the New Yorkers, right? The New Yorkers, you know, it's not, he didn't get it over there simply because he cared about feeding them. He wanted to make a buck. And in doing that, however, the living standards of both individuals being free to exchange those potatoes, one side said, I value the dollar more than I value that potato. And the other side said, I value the potato more than I value the dollar. And both of these people, in that cordial, peaceful exchange, bettered their living standards unknowingly. Second, that we don't think about the beat. This is why people always go talk about racism and hate and all of this stuff. And you listen to the media, or maybe even you get on social media, you think that it's running rampant. But you think about the cordial exchanges that you have with individuals on a daily basis. Be it you just went to the store to grab a Red Bull, and you had a peaceful exchange with probably somebody that was of a different race than you, maybe that was the clerk. You exchanged, have a nice day, walk. There's a peaceful, cordial exchange. And those happen all around us. We just don't generally think about our everyday, like, doings. Like, we don't think about those as peaceful, voluntary exchange. And people aren't holding guns to our heads as we're having those voluntary, exchanges. And we have, because we're these sort of social creatures, everybody's a part of these different subcultures. People like the same sports team, like different sports teams. It brings them together. They are at a football game. They have a lot of fun, have friends over and all this stuff. Like, we have these subcultures that we belong to, and libertarianism doesn't outlaw any of this stuff. Like, it encourages it. This is why we want the markets to be free, to allow us to be able to mingle with people that would mingle with us. Unfortunately, the government sometimes makes it difficult to do. They penalize people, for doing that, and they have historically said that you can't be with this type of person. We're going to outlaw that. You know what I mean? Or you can't have this sort of exchange with it, no matter how voluntary it is. But this is why we want to rid the state of its rule over people's lives, because we do want to become more social creatures. And I think that in doing that, it works out for everybody, just in the analogy that I use with the Idaho potato farmers and the New Yorkers.
Well, let's talk about a peaceful, mutually beneficial exchange, because I think a lot of people watching this, they want to know when the next album's coming out. Because if I can listen to songs that translate libertarian values into something that's just an enjoyable experience, it'll melt my face off. So you guys have completed recording a new album. Where are you guys in the process?
Well, right now, like, people have to understand that we do everything ourselves because we don't have a label. So generally, if you were on a label, all you would do is go and they pay for you to record. You're done. They do everything else. Think about all things, whether it be coming up with a marketing scheme, a plan, putting the album together.
You guys produce and mix and
all of that is done. Is in house. Yeah. So we have to do all of that. So it's recorded, written, recorded, done. It's going through the mix and master process now, and then we're also coming up with our marketing for it. So this year, for sure, it will be out. And I expect people, they're going to love what we've done. I think we hit people over the head with all kinds of music last time. We had some rap elements. We had straight rap songs. We had straight hardcore songs, straight just really brutal sort of metal tracks. And I think this expands on some of those ideas, but we mix it up even more so. So I'm really excited to get this out because I think this, even more than the first album, which was seemingly a test run, this even more so I think represents the individuals within it. So by this year, you'll have something, in hand, hopefully soon, that you're gonna relate to. It'll have that message that it's had, and there's some elements that certainly from a social aspect that we weren't able to touch on last album that we're going to be expanding on. So it's not the same exact approach, same exact feel as the first album, but it does have that. You hear it and you think BackWordz, you think freedom, you think cool storylines, you think brutal, melt your face off, in your face music, and I think it's going to be something for everybody, even more so than the last album.
Very cool. So we're in Dallas right now. I've come to your hometown.
Yeah.
When you guys go back on tour, I'd love to have you back on in D.C.
Let's do it.
Let's do something there because I think there's a lot more to talk about. We're just scratching the surface. I love the conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it. I'm 100% with it.
Thanks for watching Kibbe on Liberty. By now, you know this is the most important event of your week. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube. Click the little bell so you get notifications. Kibbe on Liberty, mostly honest conversations with mostly interesting people.